Okay, in the second video, I'm going to spend time looking not at what I think is right, but what I can tell is obviously wrong. In 1 John chapter 4, verse 6, the Apostle John mentioned, "And hereby we do know," where this is something you can study, you research. He said, "Hereby know we the spirit of truth and the spirit of error." As I just previously mentioned in a previous video, that you may not know the truth about something, but you can certainly use your logic and senses and research and notice the error. Okay, and so this is like a mechanic where he looks for the wrong, what's not working right, fix the wrong, and then the engine will run properly. Okay, so I'm going to give you several examples. I don't know how long this is going to take, but we'll see. This is some of the research, and I don't claim to be an expert on anything, but I want to be a student on everything. For example, okay, here is two maps, and hopefully you can see these. Okay, these are maps that are supposedly of the world. But if you look at this map, I'll hold this one as the clearest one to see. And then if you do a little research and you look online for the square miles of certain places. Now Greenland up here at the top is over 836,000 square miles. So not quite a million square miles. But notice its size. Then if you go to the United States is 3,100,000 square miles in the mainland, not Alaska. And notice the size of Greenland versus the United States. Obviously, there's a discrepancy. And if you look at Europe, Europe is 3,930,000 square miles, and compare that with Greenland, and I think you can see that obviously something is not proportionally correct. South America is 6,890,000, and in this map they are practically the same. And in this map, you see that they're practically the same. So that's just a very simple example that you may not know what is right, but you certainly can tell what is wrong. Now, this topic here is going to be the difference between the heliocentric and the geocentric model of the Earth. Okay, heliocentric, these are from things that I've researched, is where you have the sun stationary and the earth rotates around the sun. You say, well, that's what I've been taught all my life, and so have I. And so where did that idea come from? The geocentric model is that the earth is stationary. It's sitting stationary, kind of like this. Okay, and the sun rotates around the earth. Now, before you get into the size, it would go rotate this way, but when you have the flat earth, it rotates around the earth this way. That's the two different theories. Okay, now, where do these ideas come from? Okay, the first known model of the planetary system from the research I've studied was from Plato, Aristotle, and Ptolemy. It was a geocentric model. And that was accepted for years. I think it was a round earth model like this, but the sun supposedly went around the earth. There's a fellow named Nicholas Copernicus, created a model that is accepted today, the heliocentric model. Okay, he got the model from a guy named Pythagoras, who came up with the idea in 500 BC. He was a Kabbalist. Kabbalah. Okay, he is recognized by the early scientists to be the true founder of the heliocentric model. This is the fundamental tenet of the Kabbalah and Freemasonry. Now, of Copernicus' day, the Catholic hierarchy encouraged or pushed Copernicus to publish his theory of the heliocentric model, but the Protestant preachers of the day strongly resisted the model. So this would have been in the, I think, 1500s. Now the Jesuit priest, like the undercover militants of the Catholic hierarchy, deceptively taught this heliocentric model with a globe Earth. Many of the Jesuits became astronomers and scientists to continue to promote the idea. Darwin promoted the evolutionary theory with the support of Westcott and Hort, two pro-Mariolators. Darwin's only degree in life was the degree in theology. A person needs to understand that. Excuse me, that's why the evolutionary theory is a faith. Then there's a fellow named George Lemaitre. He was a Jesuit-trained priest. He proposed the Big Bang theory. Okay, coming through time. Big Bang, Maximus Bangus. You know, Big Bang, big explosion, made everything operate perfectly. And the Society of the Jesuits have been propagating this heliocentric theory for 500 years. Now, within my lifetime, when I was about 2 years old, NASA was created. Operation Paperclip smuggled hundreds of Nazi scientists and officers into the United States. You can read this online. And one of those Nazis, Werner von Braun, was promoted to head up NASA Flight Center, studying up in the air. Now, I know in the Bible, the ones who were trying to get up to heaven is in Genesis chapter 11 at the Tower of Babel, and then God came down and then changed all the languages. So he was instrumental, this former Nazi scientist or officer, I'm not sure which he was, established NASA. And if you look at NASA, look at the symbol, the forked tongue that comes out of all space agencies throughout the world is a vector. The vector is the end forked tongue of a serpent. You know, it kind of gets us back to the Bible, where we have a serpent that appeared, shapeshifted into a man to talk to Eve, to deceive her. And when he appears, he doesn't appear as a snake. He doesn't appear as, with his horns. 2 Corinthians chapter 11 says he appears as an angel of light. He appears as a man. Now, isn't it interesting that they have a forked tongue, the vector, as a symbol of almost all the space agencies, and many of their patches will have that same? I'm getting to smell something very conspiratorial. The moon missions, if you believe they went to the moon, were named Apollo. In the Bible, you'll find that in Revelation 9, verse 11. I don't know if that number was significant. 9:11 of Revelation, Apollo, Apollyon. Yeah, I dare say that is significant. Where September, on 9/11, where that was very significant in Jewish holidays. And the Freemasonry is interwoven in many of the symbols of NASA. Now, NASA controls all information about space and astronomy. Not only that, from my discoveries, the Jesuits and the Vatican have been intimately involved in all things space. the Vatican and NASA jointly own Lucifer. Lucifer, the world's largest binocular telescope. The Vatican is awaiting the arrival of an extraterrestrial savior. You'll find that mentioned in Acts chapter 14, meaning that man is looking for something from outer space with an advanced intelligence to rule the world, Acts 14, verse 12. Now, NASA, when they published their supposed pictures of the Earth, where they supposedly went up into space and took these pictures, their cameras evidently use fisheye lenses to distort the shape of the Earth into a curve. I saw one of those pictures of the camera where it showed the curve this way, but then I also saw the picture where the curve was this way. Not the bottom of the Earth, but the Earth in a smile, showing that the camera was distorting the real picture. The NASA's pictures of the Earth, actually, if you do a research, are computer generated. In fact, Robert Simon created what he called Blue Marble 2.0 in 2002, and he stated the last picture of the entire atmosphere was a 1972 Apollo 17, and data was used to create these pictures. What about space or low Earth orbit? Well, let's go to the Bible and see if we find anything. Back in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, here's what the Lord said. God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." Now notice, his dominion is limited to the earth. God wants to limit the sinfulness of man to the earth. There's no mention of man getting off the earth. The hovering satellites, where the satellite's going, it appears to me that they are either a hoax, or more likely they're nothing but massive balloons with electronic equipment attached to them. And the reason they don't fall to Earth is because airplanes seem to capture them before entropy overcomes them. Much of your GPS is nothing more than triangular cell towers provides a ground-based GPS. If you doubt that, look at Google Earth, and it takes thousands of pictures throughout the world, but those pictures are not in real time. Look at the picture of your property, and you will see it is not in real time. It is a picture that could be a year or two old. It appears to me that either the Van Allen belt, a dangerous radiation, or a glass dome firmament prevents man from traveling through it. God limits man to the earth, but man has rebelled about that multiple times. There was a fella, and this is an example of true science. There's a fellow named Auguste Piccard. He was a Swiss physicist, inventor, and explorer. He was known for his record-breaking hot air balloon flights, with which he studied Earth's upper atmosphere and cosmic rays. The first time on May 27, 1931, Auguste Piccard and Paul Kepler took off from Augsburg, Germany, and reached a record altitude of 15,781 feet. During this flight, he was able to gather substantial data on the upper atmosphere as well as measure cosmic rays. The magazine Popular Science in August 1931 described their journey. And it says, the story of their adventure surpasses fiction. During the ascent, the aluminum ball began to leak. They plugged it desperately with Vaseline and cotton waste, stopping the leak. In the first half hour, the balloon shot up 9 miles. Through portholes, the observers, so an eyewitness account, saw the Earth through copper-colored, then bluish haze. They said it seemed a flat disk with upturned edge. And they went up to almost 10 miles high. He went up on several occasions. Now there's somebody's testimony. Now I've never done that. Is he lying? I have no idea. Okay, now again, if we look at the problem, you may not understand what is true, but let's look at what we know is false. Scientists tell us that is reality. Now on this one I see that they do have Greenland better proportionate than they did on the other map. Now they say that it's 25,000 miles, a ball, curved, spherical. So if you use spherical trigonometry and use the Pythagorean theorem, you'll discover that when you start going around the ball, either here or here, maybe a little less up here, but right here at the equator, if you go 1 mile, it's supposed to drop 8 inches. But if you go 2 miles, you have to take 2, square it, 4, times 8, it drops 32 inches because it's exponential as it goes. So you're going around and around and around. Now there's a common saying that says numbers don't lie. So if we believe this theory, then we're going to discover some things that can't be true. For example, the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway down here is 24 miles long. So if you take 24 times 24 times 8 inches, you'll discover that there should be, in that 24 miles, 384 feet difference from one end to another. But there is not. It doesn't curve around. The Mancha Swamp Bridge is about the same, and there should be 350 feet of difference going down, but there's not. The Chicago skyline often can be seen from the western shore of Michigan across the lake. And in one place, it's 45 miles across. So if you go with the curvature, if the curvature is correct, you take 45 miles times 45 times 8 inches, and you should have 1,340 feet of curvature. The Sears or Willis Tower is 1,451 feet tall. So that means if you do the math, you should have less than 90 feet of the Sears Tower being seen if the curvature is correct. But from that side, you can see practically all of the Sears Tower. The Trump Tower is 1,170 feet tall. You can see it. And the John Hancock Center, again, 1,128, and you can see it. You should not be able to see them if the curvature is correct. All four, Sears, Trump, the AON Center, John Hancock Center, can be seen 50 miles across the lake, which is 1,667 feet of curvature, and you should not be able to see any of them. One person stated at 60 miles across the lake and a cliff, he could see with binoculars the antennas of Sears Tower and the ON building, when there should have been 2,816 feet of curvature. The Suez Canal over here runs over 100 miles, and there are no locks. It is perfectly level. It should have, because you're going with a curvature, it should have 6,666 feet of curvature according to the Pythagorean theorem. And remember that numbers don't lie. So the curvature of the earth is definitely in question. And then when you walk to the ocean, of course somebody says you have reached sea curvature. Or do they say sea level? Why do they say sea level? It's because truth is often hidden in plain sight. When a ship vanishes from the horizon, people think it's going around a curvature. But if it loses it, when it gets outside of your perspective, wait another 5 or 10 minutes so it's still going over the so-called curvature. Get you a pair of binoculars and you'll see it again. The object doesn't tip away nor tilt with the curvature. The horizon always appears at eye level. Now, most assume the disappearance is due to the curvature, when it is actually perspective or a limitation of your natural eyesight. They don't go over the horizon, they go into the horizon, moving beyond the limit of our vision and past our vanishing point. Now, if the earth were a globe, and if it's spinning, so we got an airplane, obviously the airplane is not proportionate here. If the earth was a globe, and the airplane's coming, they would have to continually point the nose down to come around the earth. Coming across this way. They have to continually, how often? At a cruising speed of 500 miles an hour, the pilot would need to dip the nose downward and descend 2,700 feet per minute, or he would fly out into space. If the curvature. But what do pilots say? We are leveling off at a certain altitude. Now, another thing, if the earth is rotating, as the earth is rotating, and the plane takes off, it's going against the rotation of the earth, traveling at 500 miles an hour, but the earth is rotating 1,000 miles an hour, according to them. Man, you could really save a lot of time. Or if he's coming this way, if he's gone with the direction, he can't catch it because it's supposed to be rotating 1,000 miles an hour when the plane is only traveling 500 miles an hour. Plus, if the earth is rotating this way, when he lands on this direction, he's got to try to make up for the speed difference. They say, well, the atmosphere, the ether is going with the earth. Then he's bucking a 500 or 1,000 mile an hour wind, or he's going against 1,000 mile per hour crosswind. These are all problems that a person would have if the earth is spinning and then moving. Now, here's what scientists claim. Okay, this is what they claim: the earth is spinning and spiraling and spinning and then moving around the sun. So it's spinning at 1,000 miles per day in order to 25,000 mile ball. So in order to come all the way around 24 hours, you got to have 1,000 miles an hour per at the equator. And then it revolves around the sun as it travels around the sun 66,600 miles per hour. And it's tilted on its axis 23.4 degrees, which means its incline is 66.6 degrees. And yet the sun is spiraling around the Milky Way at 670 million miles an hour. And the Milky Way is supposed to be traveling at 1.3 million miles an hour. And all this takes place, and you can have a day where you don't feel the wind at all. My five senses, my sight tells me that these trees are not moving from a 1,000-mile-an-hour wind. Now, if the flight traveled within the atmosphere of the spinning Earth, then it would travel against a 1,000-mile-an-hour wind, or with it, or buck it, or going a crosswind. The plane could not stay in the air. If you do a little research online about airplane flights, you might discover that it would reinforce the idea of a flat or compass-like shape Earth. Now, scientists tell us that when the Earth is like this, the water and everything stays on the Earth because of gravity. Oh, the wonderful theory of gravity. Gravity is necessary to keep a man from spinning off the Earth here in the center. If he's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour here, gravity is what keeps him here. But if the same man goes up here where the spin is less, but yet has the same amount of gravity, he's going to weigh about a ton up here versus 100 pounds or 150 pounds down here. Gravity is a scapegoat that cannot be explained. Why do things fall or float? It's because of density or buoyancy. If it's heavier than air, it falls. If it's lighter than air, it floats. Helium and smoke will need to have an anti-gravity component in order to go up the way it does. According to the heliocentric proponent, the force of gravity at the equator is perfectly balanced against the centrifugal force of the spinning Earth. And when a man who weighs 175 pounds here goes up here, because of the gravitational pull, but yet there's less centrifugal force, he would weigh 175 pounds here. Up here, he would weigh 700,000 pounds. You see, you can tell a lot of things about something that ain't right. Okay, in the next video, I'll get into some of the experiments that has been given evidence against this idea of a spinning globe that man is trying to promote with no evidence.